Yo, what's up? It's Dagenstein here, bringing you another fighting game video, and today we're going to be talking all about fighting game accessibility. So you all know by now that fighting games have been becoming more accessible, right? But there's a couple of ways developers like to do this. So one of the easiest and most recognizable ways that developers try to make games more accessible is increasing the damage, right? So when the damage is increased, it make it feel like the game is a lot easier to play because there is more damage happening. So if the newer player is able to do more damage, they feel better and they feel like they have a better chance at beating a better player. And in some cases, they actually can win games or steal rounds. Strive is the perfect example of this, as a lot of community members feel that the game damage was too high. They did nerf the damage in this patch that we are in now. So the damage is a little bit lower on certain moves. There is a little bit more scaling and stuff. But before, the game definitely had very high damage. They scaled some damage on characters, and now they're doing even more damage scaling on the actual system side of the game. So if you're just here and you don't play Strive, let me demonstrate a basic combo just to demonstrate how high the damage can actually be. Just like that. So you see the amount of damage that Soul can do from one basic combo. This is just a basic counter hit starting 5H, and like with his pressure, this is something that can come up very often. So you block 2 hits of something, the risk gauge cranks up a little bit, you get counter hit by one thing, and then all of a sudden you're taking like 70% of your life is just going. Like, a lot of characters have big damaging combos inside this game, and that's just one way the developers tried to make Guilty Gear Strive a more accessible game. Another thing developers try to do to make games more accessible is by homogenizing the options. So if we take a look at Guilty Gear Xrd in comparison to Strive, right? Take a look at Amelia here, for example. So just looking at the amount of options you have as far as her Gatling. So we do 2P, 2P could go into close slash, 2P could go into 2S, 2P could go into 5H, 2P could go into 2D, right? So just think about the options that your 2P could go inside of Strive. Is a lot different. So just other buttons like 2K could cancel into itself more times, 2K could go into close slash, 2K could go into this, 2K could go into 2D. But there's a lot more options that are here. You don't have to just do this. So in Strive, you know, you mainly just have your 2K that could go into your 2D, or it could go into like your 6H, which is actually not a thing you could do with her in this version. But you know, you have just set amount of options, but these options are a lot more abundant. There's a lot more what you can do here. You can do a lot more as far as the abilities that are possible here. Coming back to Strive, you'll know the options are a lot more homogenized. So 2P for universally goes into command normals in this game. So that's just how it works, right? So because of this, pressure structures are a lot more easier to understand. When a person goes into their close slash, they know that this is where you're going to get the most amount of your options. You can go into your 2D, you go into your 2S, you can go into your 5H, you go into your command normals, right? So this is where a lot of the pressure structure starts, is with the close slash inside of this game. But once again, it just makes it easier because people understand the basic pressure. When you start with a close slash in this game, you know the main thing that a person would try to do is probably like delay into a 2S, which is mainly like a low for most of the cast. And then mainly they will probably go for like a delayed throw or something like that. So you could do that. They could do close slash into close slash to try to catch you do something, or close slash into like a button to try to reset their pressure from there, because the close slash is plus on just about every character in the game. So the pressure structure is a lot more homogenized in this game, and it's much easier to tell exactly what a person is going to go for off of the options, rather than when there's so many different Gatling options, and that where pressure can get a little bit more trickier, a little bit more scary, and make it harder for people, newer players, to understand exactly what's going on. This brings me to my last example that we're using Guilty Gear Strive as an example for, talking about how developers are trying to make games more accessible through having less plus frames. So there's a lot more negative frames inside of games. What do this has to do with making games more accessible? Well, when things are a lot more negative in games, it's a lot easier to tell when something ends, right? When is it your turn? One of the hardest things about fighting games is trying to understand exactly the pressure structure of your opponent. So if you we think about those Gatlings that we were talking about earlier, where there's different Gatlings you got to think about per character and how plus things could be. Some things are just plus, right? So Lust Shaker, for example, is something that is plus for Amelia inside of Guilty Gear Xrd. 2P is also going to be something that is plus. So there's a lot more plus frames to deal with. I believe 2K is also plus in the game. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But there's a lot more plus frames inside of Xrd compared to Strive. So it's a lot more easier to understand when it is to take your turn. So when Amelia does something like this, you see Lust Shaker, oh, it's your turn now, right? So you don't have to worry about these pressure resets very crazy like you did before, or you don't have to worry about her doing 2k into like delays because it's a Gatling. Mainly you just have to worry about like this Gatling. But yeah, there's just a lot less plus frames inside of these games now. All right, so you guys can see that we're on Grand Blue Fantasy Versus now, so you probably already know what this means. Talking about how developers try to make fighting games more accessible through easier inputs. So if you don't know about Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, inside of this game, as you can see right above or right beside Grand's face picture right there, there are icons which represents his special moves, and then there are arrows right there. These are the directions you have to just press along with the easy input button. So if I press forward and the easy input button, that simply gives you a DP. If I press down and the easy input button, that gives you this special move. If I just press it by itself, that's the neutral one, which gives you fireball, and the back one gives you this boot move right here. So you can basically do one button DP. So when you're playing the neutral inside of this game, somebody's throwing fireball, you see this? Oh, just one button DP, just like that, right? So you could just do it real quickly. This is how they tried to make this game more accessible. Now it does make it in a very unique way where they are trying to reward you for doing the manual inputs, but it does make things easier for new players because they don't have to worry about doing an actual DP motion. They can just press forward and button and actually get something to come out. So as you just heard me talk about for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, there are easy inputs, but the developers had tried to make it in a way to where it actually rewards the better inputs or the manual inputs. So all these things that we are talking about, while they are trying to create a sense of sensibility or accessibility, there are ways to try to make these mechanics not intrusive on the way of how we do things now, right? So while you do certain things, there are ways that developers can try to make these things more rewarding for people who actually know how to do these certain things, or try to implement the harder game plans or inputs or whatever it may be inside of their gameplay. So 2 more ways that developers try to make games more accessible are going to be through input leniency and of course the core mechanics themselves. When you think of a game like Street Fighter 4, this is going to be a game that is going to have high execution, right? There is very short amount of time between the amount of inputs that the players are trying to do. There was a lot of 1 frame, 2 frame links inside of that game, and they'll have multiple in succession inside of combos. That's why players were trying to do techniques known as like plinking or double tapping to try to get multiple attempts at trying to land these 1 to 2 frame links that these players had to do at a high competitive level. But if we take a game like Melty Blood Type Lumina and using Shiki as example, just using this quick string that he has right here, notice how it has this like huge pop, right? This huge pop is a huge opportunity for him to press any other button that he wants. So I can press any button like that and it just simply connects. This game also has the auto combo. So you see I'm just mashing the button from over there and it gives you a combo. While that's not optimal, there are characters that are going to utilize the auto combo in their combos to actually get some of their optimal damage. But once again, just showcasing that he has the ability to basically just press this button at any point in time, or press any button that allows him to just, you know, get a hit just like that. And you realize you got the hit, you can just start mashing auto combo from there if you really want to. Like, this is some very good leniency as far as like how much time you have to do things. So there's a lot of characters in this game that when you hit with something, it like pops them up in the air. Like say if you hit with like something like this, that pops them up in the air, or the fatal counter inside of this game. As you can see, they are pretty much going to be inside of a state where they cannot no longer actually tech until they hit the ground. So rather than having to visualize the situation very quickly for a quick air combo, you can sort of just check jab the air. If you land a fatal, land on the ground, and then go for your basic combo from there. Now, talking about how mechanics can make a game more accessible, taking this game for example as well, this game has quite a few mechanics that actually allows players to have more chances. So talking about the heat system, this is essentially a burst that you could do on block or in neutral, right? So this is going to knock the opponent away, and you only need 1 bar to do it. So when you have 1 bar, you can simply just do this. So if a person is doing pressure to you, or you don't like the situation, like maybe the mix-up or something, you could do this, and this will essentially get them off of you. The other thing you could do is this right here. This slows down the game, and it allows you to have these things called clash frames. So all these moves that you use basically are going to be harder to deal with inside of this game. And this is also going to be frame 1. So not only is this frame 1, but this is also frame 1. And of course, if your character has a DP, then you also just have access to a frame 1 invincible DP as well. Not to mention that this game has access to a frame 1 shield mechanic that allows you to just simply hold it in people block strings or in wake up, that puts you in a RPS situation. So this showcases what it looks like. This is what happens when a person hit the shield. And just to demonstrate the RPS situation, the A attack is going to give you this frontal swipe like that. So if the person tries to shield back, which is the answer to beat this, then you essentially press the B, which does that, and that is going to counter hit them for trying to press the shield back, and then you're going to be able to get a combo from there. So what they would do then is just go back to the first one. And the big cash out one would be this one right here. This is the BC version. This version allows you to get a big combo, but they shield that one, then they can do it back, and then they can get a big combo. So this is sort of the RPS situation on a basic level inside of this game that allows for players to have more chances, because this is frame 1. You know, your DP is going to be frame 1. This is going to be frame 1. And of course, this is going to be frame 1. That allows you to go crazy for a little bit because you have all these moves. Now, there are answers to these tools, of course. So a better player will definitely know how to deal with them a lot better than a newer player. But it is showcasing the idea of how developers can put tools inside a game to give players more chances to actually try to interact with their opponents. And the last thing we're going to talk about for how developers are trying to make fighting games more accessible is by making comeback mechanics. Now, a big one that I know a lot of people were not fond of when it first came or was introduced inside the game is the rage system inside of Tekken 7, right? So this allows these characters to have these supers, and these supers come out when you actually have when you actually have access to 30% of your life. I believe it's like 30%. Your characters start to glow red and you have access to these supers. Now, these supers are really crazy because they actually have armor. So if I try to punch her when she's like doing this animation here, then I will just lose, right? So as you can see, she just basically armored through the attack. She got a little bit of life on her that was taken for damage, but I ultimately was the one that like failed that situation because obviously I took a lot of damage. So this is something that is inside of this game, and there's other games that have these combat mechanics, and this is just a way for them to try to help players. You think of like Street Fighter 5, where we have the miraculous V-trigger comebacks, right? That's obviously one of the games I don't have. I would have definitely showcased that one. But yeah, obviously V-trigger is very strong, and when people utilize that to come back on their opponents, we see that as like highway robbery as far as like how it actually happens, right? There's a person winning, all of a sudden a person does a block into pop V-trigger, then a bunch of stuff happens, the person gets dizzy, and all of a sudden they win the round, right? We see it happens a lot inside of that game. It's definitely something that players like that the game is moving away from inside of Street Fighter 6. But this is one of the ways that they were trying to make that game more accessible for Street Fighter 5. Hey. And just for the record, your boy do got these. Stop playing with me. Stop playing with me, yo. Come on now. And that pretty much goes over the bulk of what developers have been trying to make games more accessible to newer players. Now, Street Fighter 6 definitely has something that's definitely very interesting. The new dynamic mode, where it literally is almost like a programmed AI to do different things depending on the situation by just simply you pressing the buttons, right? So very crazy that this is like the new direction that we can even take. We go further and beyond as far as how this new accessibility goes for fighting games. But let me know how you guys feel about everything as far as like fighting game accessibility talk, or how you guys feel about overall the direction that developers have been taking games. Do you feel like there's a balance that could be found? Do you think the balance is already found? Do you guys like that they're trying to go this route, or do you guys not like these type of things inside fighting games? Let me know all that down in the comments below. Anyway, if you like anything I had to say, drop me a like. I really appreciate it. And if you want more from me, follow me on my socials. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn notifications so the next video goes live. As always, my name is Dyken, and I'll see you next time. Signing out.